This week on Dig Me Out. With your hosts, Jason Ziak and Tim Minichi.
Jay, we're back again with another episode thanks to our Dig Me Out Union on Patreon. You can help us make the next episode happen by joining us at dmounion.com or digmeoutunion.com. Jay, are you ready for our first poll episode of 2023?
I'm locked and loaded. I'm ready in every possible way.
Excellent. So for the folks listening who may not be aware, over at Patreon, we have a tournament every month. It's like March Madness, but it's monthly. It's monthly madness. And we have 27 albums suggested by listeners, by random people that show up at our website who, they wander in off the street. They don't know what they're looking at, ask some questions and leave. And then they drop a little suggestion in there. Album, artist, maybe some comments. All those get put in the hopper. Our intern sorts through them, gives us a new tournament every month. 27 albums enter, 1 album leaves. And this was chock full of good stuff, Jay. I had nowhere idea where this was going in any of these three. We do 3 sets of 9. There was a wide variety of stuff. Some that we've covered in passing, but not much that we've actually gotten to like real deeply. Only a couple. So, did you have any predictions where you thought this was going to go?
I'm trying to find the poll. Hold on a second.
So, like Matthew,
I thought we were going to get Quicksand. I mean, that is a favorite amongst the patrons for sure. It's talked about a lot. It's a good fit for us, right? It's a band that got some buzz, had a couple good records, built a fan base, but it's pretty much forgotten.
Well, our first round was Kill Holiday, Somewhere Between Right and Wrong, Between the Right and Wrong, or Between the Right is Wrong. Nuzzles, San Lorenzo's Blues, in Spiral Carpet's Devil Hopping, The Weaker Than's Fallow, Turkish Delight, Haucha Magaucha, Driving and Crying's Fly Me Courageous, Black Lab's Your Body Above Me, Propagandy's How to Clean Everything, and the Matthew Good Band Underdogs. We take 2 winners out of each round. For that one, it was Black Lab and Driving and Crying. For round 2, that's where Quicksand comes in. Quicksand Slip, Love Batteries, Confusion to Go-Go, The Wonder Stuffs, Never Loved Elvis, Letters to Cleo's Wholesale Meats and Fish, The Y Stores Live at Midnight, Red Lori, Yellow Lori, Blasting Off, Mr. Reality, self-titled, Lifters, Melinda, Everything Was Beautiful and Nothing Hurt, and Soul Coughing's Irresistible Bliss. From this round, Letters to Cleo and Quicksand moved on. Then for a third round, Trans Am's Future World, The Grifters' Crappin' You Negative, Mega City 4's Soul Scraper, Zucker Baby's self-titled, Sub Rosa's Never Bet the Devil Your Head, Pale Saints' Slow Buildings, Underground Lovers' Dream It, Sidewinder, Atlantis, and Machine Translations' Holiday in Spain. For this one, we had 2 winners, Pale Saints' Slow Building and Trans Am Future World. And in our final, actually Matthew Goodband was in the first group as well. I'm sorry, I mixed that up. So we had 7 in the final instead of 6. So it was Trans Am, Pale Saints, Quicksand, Letters to Cleo, Driving and Crying, Black Lab, Matthew Goodband, all in the final round. And it was a tight one. Coming in last, Black Lab and Driving and Crying. Second to last was Trans Am. And then this is where it gets tight. Pale Saints with 18% of the vote. Matthew Goodband with 21% of the vote. Quicksand with 24% of the vote. And Letters to Cleo, Wholesale Meats and Fish with 26% of the vote. That's what we're going to talk about, Jay. Letters to Cleo. Now, we have a history with Letters to Cleo because Kay Hanley's been on the show twice.
Right.
She was on our Boston episode, and she was on our Lilith Fair episode.
It's about time we reviewed one of her records, right?
Exactly. And we both have young children that watched, Doc McStuffins, which Kay wrote the music for. People may not know that, but after, so let's get into a little bit of history of Letters to Cleo. They're from Boston, Massachusetts, formed in 1990. They were together until 2000. Then they broke up. Then they got together again for a year. And they've been on and off getting together, making EPs, doing a little tours here and there. But a lot of the people in this band are busy. So even though they were pretty, they were around a lot in the 90s in terms of, like we mentioned, they were on Lilith Fair. There were lots of tours. They were on a ton of soundtracks. In fact, they have hit singles off of soundtracks based on covers. They had a song called not Dangerous Type, but that's the Cars cover that was on the Craft soundtrack. And then they did covers for the 10 Things I Hate About You soundtrack, I Want You to Want Me and Cruel to Be Kind, which are Nick Lowe and Cheap Trick. And as I mentioned, Kay Hanley she made some solo records, but then she provides the vocals for Rachel Lee Cook in Josie and the Pussycats. She wrote music for Sonic Heroes, a Sega game. She does Disney projects, including My Friends Tigger and Pooh, and all of the music for the show Doc McStuffins. So that's lead singer and rhythm guitar. Michael Einstein, who was her husband for a while, and they have 2 kids together. He is a touring musician, and he has toured with Our Lady Peace, I guess is like second guitar, and Lisa Loeb. And then for a while, Stacy Jones was the drummer. When they broke up, he went on to form American Hi-Fi, and he's been the music director and drummer for Miley Cyrus. And he's also played with, this is a list, Madonna, Matchbox 20, Veruca Salt, Avril Lavigne, Ariana Grande, Joan Jett, the Jonas Brothers, the Flaming Lips, Billy Ray Cyrus, Sheryl Crow.
You're just making up names at this point.
Butch Walker, Amy Mann, Lily Allen, Against Me. He's busy. The dude's busy. He's always on tour. Scott Riebling was the original bassist one of the bassists in the 90s. They actually had a couple of bassists in the 90s. He does production work. He's done production work for the Von Bondies, Cobra Starship, and Fall Out Boy. And then the other members, as far as like getting together now, so you have Stacy Jones, Michael Einstein, Kay Hanley. Greg McKenna plays lead guitar and plays backing vocals. He's original to the band. And current bass player is Joe Klumpus. So they've been through 4 bass. This is their 4th bass player and 3rd drummer. So the rhythm section has not been consistent with this band. And again, they were only in the 90s. I mean, it was 10 years. So that's, I think 3 drummers in the 90s, or 4 drummers. Yes. Tom Pulse was the drummer for a year. Jason Sutter was the drummer for a couple of years. Abe Labriel Jr. was the drummer for a couple of years. I guess that drummer seat's just not meant to be.
Spinal Tapish.
Yeah, it's very Spinal Tapish. And then, of course, if you watched Parks and Rec in season 4, there's an episode called The Comeback Kid, where Ben Wyatt, played by Adam Scott, is wearing a Letters to Cleo shirt. And in the 6th season, the band reunites to play a fictional concert in Pawnee. And that led to an increase in t-shirt sales, including myself buying one, which I forgot to wear because should have thought about it. Jay, were you familiar with Letters to Cleo before we got into this?
Yeah, I knew was it the record before this? That was
Yeah,
on the
so the
radio a
record
lot?
before this is Aurora Gory Alice. That's the one that has Here and Now, the
Yep.
single Here and Now, which is probably the biggest single that went to number 10 on the US alternative charts, number 56 on the Billboard Hot 100, number 40 in the top 40 mainstream. So it charted well here in the States. And then this is
Yep.
their Wholesale Meats and Fish is their second album. It came out in 1985. Go is the fourth and final album from the band that was released in 97. And then they released 2 EPs. Back to Nebraska came out in 2016. Okay Christmas came out in 2019. And then there's a compilation album called Sister, which has some originals that were older songs, like demos and stuff. And then there's some covers, including a cover of Dreams by Stevie Nicks. This band did a lot of soundtrack work, and there's a lot of covers. So if you look through their like Discogs page, you'll find them attached to a lot of compilations. But I had never listened to a full record. Had you?
No, me neither. No, you know what? I did listen to the one they put out a couple years ago.
Oh, that EP?
Yeah.
Back to Christmas.
Actually,
Back to Nebraska.
Yeah, that's the one I probably listened to the most. But not in the 90s. I mean, I just knew them from the singles, probably some of that soundtrack stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really it.
This album made it to number 188 on the Billboard 200 and number 11 on the Heat Seekers, whereas Aurora Gory Alice made it to 123 and 3, respectively. What do we get comment-wise? Whitney Biller said, it's hard for me to decide between Letters to Cleo and Quicksand, but Letters to Cleo is too catchy to ignore. Bill Davidson said, nothing I voted for made it to the final, but I'll vote for Letters to Cleo because I listened to their 1990s cassette Sister when I was in college. That was what we were talking about, the compilation that later came out with a couple of covers on it. Did other people say, Jeff Jensen said, I went with the Pale Saints for the sake of learning digging, though Letters to Cleo Fast Way is exactly what I'm into. Justin Wexler said, stoked to finally get a Cleo album on the pod and possibly their best one. Vadim Tavers said, lots of great choices here. As much as I love the obscurity of my Pale Saints pick, it's going to be tough to outvote Quicksand and Letters to Cleo, both of which I'd love to hear episodes on. And Joe Royland voted for Black Lab. Kyle Bittner voted for Matthew Good Band, even though he didn't pick that one. He actually went with Letters to Cleo, which won. He voted against his own pick, which ended up winning. That sounds like there's a fix on, like something's going on there. I can't quite figure it out. Willie Dillon said, Quicksand is my favorite out of these, so I'd probably like hearing about any of them other than Matthew Good. So Willie throwing some shade at Matthew Good. I don't know what that shade's about. Gavin said,
good.
Yeah, he's like anything but.
Yeah. He has a controversial personal life. So maybe that's
he does? Okay.
Yeah. I'll let you Google that.
Okay. We don't do controversy on here unless it's about snare sounds. Gavin said, not exactly over the moon with this outcome. None of my votes progressed. Let's have Trans Am just for something different. Perhaps the host can teach us how to delete the vocal track from a recording. I haven't listened to that record, so it must be interesting. But here's what Kyle said when he submitted. Overlooked power pop album that rivals the likes of far more successful Hole and Veruca Salt. Well, isn't this nice timing? Because we just happened to talk about Hole very recently. Yeah. And we have done an episode on Veruca Salt. It was a while ago, but we did a Sophomore Slump Revisited with 8 Arms to Hold You way back when. So now we're finally getting around to Letters to Cleo. So Jay, why don't you tell me one thing you liked about Wholesale Meats and Fish by Letters to Cleo?
I love the big chunky riffs. There's a lot of like cool guitar bends. They use that technique a couple times, I think, to great effect. They kind of like wow, wow kind of thing. there's a bundle of songs here that have really good up-tempo energy, and then they're combining that with Kay Hanley's vocal, which is, it's interesting. It's kind of it goes between being very innocent and sweet sounding and kind of clean and, you know, melodic, to a little sharp, a little snarky, a little biting. You know, she brings some attitude to it as well. So I think there's this really cool contrast where, you know, you got this big beefy rock production, very layered. Songs like Demon Rock is a good example. Fastway is another good example. Really driving and pretty bombastic musically. And then you've got her, you know, really carved out in this space in the sort of the mix where she just, you know, is able to sit in this space with, you know, her super clean voice that is, you know, kind of pulling you in and being like a little bit of a contrast, but as the band, you know, kind of wails, she can bring up the intensity with it. So I think that works really well too. It's all held together with, you know, really good sense of pop melodies, and the production as well. I hear a bit like here and there, you can kind of hear some Beatles stuff come through, just in terms of like the way the melodies are work. Even like the bass line and Laudanum. There's little hints here and there where you can kind of hear the pop sensibility that they're coming from, the way that the melodies are constructed, you know, what those are, you know, probably inspired from, and the sort of the foundation of that. I like also the pop elements they layer into the production. So there's some synth in here that's really effective, but subtle. A song like Fastway is a good example where when they get to that chorus, they add it subtly underneath, but it really gives it a big lift, which I think is super effective. And then as they go into the verse, you can kind of hear it still bringing out. They add some organ and pizza cutter. It's kind of gives it a heavier kind of vibe. And then there's some songs that really just even go to the next level on the pop side and get a little jangly. You know, guitars are a little less harsh. Song like Little Rosa or I Could Sleep, I think are good examples of that too, where, you know, maybe it gets in more of even a Cardigan space where it's even sugarier, and less rock, which I think works as well too. And that I think that through line is all this really solid, you know, kind of power pop songwriting and focus on melodies. You know, for the most part, those songs that I mentioned, you know, they're held together with pretty straightforward songwriting, focusing on trying to write good, you know, good strong choruses, and you know, some good dynamics with the production and how the band plays. So that's what I thought worked. What would you think worked for you?
Well, I really like how unpretentious this record is. This is just really good melodies, big guitars. I love the double bend stuff that happens like on Demon Rock, and I think it happens again on He's Got an Answer. I just love that stuff. I know it's simple, but it just adds that rock element. It's so basic. But when you do it well and it sounds good, it doesn't sound brittle. It sounds really beefy. And Mike Deneen produced this, who I think he passed away a couple years ago, but he produced a lot of Boston records. I think he was Jennifer Trinan's husband. It's just got this simplicity to it in terms of just big guitar tones. Some of them are just thick, and then some of them are like Fastway has like a little bit of grit to it, like crunch that I like. And then the melodies that Kay Hanley brings on top, I think what makes it so much easier to pick out what she's doing and to appreciate is because she has that higher tone. You know, it's like the opposite of a lot of 90s singers that were singing like Eddie Vedder, where they were down like this.
Right.
and it kind of gets mashed up with everything else that's happening. But because she's up there, it's almost where like a lead guitar would be.
Yep.
And so like on the stuff where she needs to, pull back, she's got a great voice. So like, I think, is it Little Rosa that has like this almost like a 60s pop song sound to it. Like it's so catchy. Now, if you had told me like, oh, that was a Go-Go's cover or something like that, or I would have believed you. But then she can also pull off the, blazing fast, like demon rock. She just doesn't have it. There's no like bad notes with her. Like everything sounds right on. It sounds exactly like what you want to hear. Like in terms of I don't miss anything. I'm not like, oh, and I don't know how she does it. I mean, maybe there's doubling going on. Like sometimes when I listen to singers, especially when they're pushed up in the mix, it sounds thin. Like, oh, I could use another vocal going on there, either a harmony or an octave. But she has like such a full voice that it doesn't need that doubling. So I just listening to this was like such a blast of fresh air because it just sounds like a rock band having fun and playing these poppy, 3.5, 4 minute long songs. And there's no like, I don't know, there's no element of it where I go, well, that sounds contrived. Like they were trying to fit into the sound of the time. They're doing drop D because that's what's the heaviness of that, or it sounds like it's his whole thing. It's its own thing. And what's weird is like there's elements of this, like I mentioned, like Little Rosa, and I think Jennifer has some kind of poppy, like more traditional power popish type sounds, where this band could easily have been in like the power pop end of things with Matthew Sweet and the power pop that rocks. Because there's the power pop that's like kind of like jangly, and then there's the power pop that's like blazing, like a lot of what the Posies did on Frosting on the Beater. We have like big guitar noise and stuff like that. And this band like fits perfectly with that. And I don't know that they actually were touring with those bands or lumped in, if at all, with those bands. I think they were kind of like out on their own because it was a weird time in terms of, this is 1995. They already had a hit in 1990. What was it? 3 with, Here and Now. So
weren't we at a time too where like, I feel like I had heard stories like labels still had the attitude of well, we've already got one, band with a one girl band or one band with a girl singer. We can't have two, which led to this. Maybe I felt like there was never more than one on the radio at a time as a result of that. So then when they would do touring, like they could never, until Lilith Fair happened, like they can never like get bands that sounded good together and kind of had the same aesthetic, because of sometimes there was weird stuff like that going on in terms of how bands were signed and like for whatever arbitrary reasons.
Right. And this was on Giant Records, which I don't know if you remember that, but this was a new label.
Yeah.
It started in the 90s. It was under Warner Brothers, and Irving Azoff started it. So they were the first album was 93, so they were pretty early on. The first release by Giant was an all-star tribute song for Gulf War called Voices That Care.
Oh my.
Like
Missed that one.
They signed MC Hammer. They released the New Jack City soundtrack. It was all over the place. They had Steely Dan on the roster, Warren Zevon, Oingo Boingo, Chicago, Deep Purple, Morbid.
Here you go again. You're just making names up.
Morbid Angel and Brian Wilson on the same label. Think about that for a second.
Man, they were so 90s.
They were just like, anybody who has a name recognition, we're going to sign them.
Yeah.
And this is what I think helped Letters to Cleo, is that Irving Azoff is a big deal. They started a film department. So it only ended up making one movie, but I'm guessing that kind of helped them get into soundtracks because of the label.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was such a weird record label to be on. So I don't know. Like, I feel like this should have been way bigger. And Awake is a really good single, I think. Demon Rock could have been a single. I don't think that was released as a single. I don't know. So what didn't work for you on the record?
There's some choruses here that I think are underwhelming, not amazing. Jennifer is a good example. Acid Jet is another example. There's also a couple diversions where they get either slow or experimental that I think are maybe missteps or not in line with what works for me on the record. So Laudanum is a good example. It's just a bit of a slog to get through. I don't think she sounds great singing slow songs. I think I Could Sleep is a better, I think, place for her voice to be, where it's still upbeat, but it's acoustic and strummy. I don't know. There's something about her delivery that just for me works a lot better when the tempo is up a bit. And then Do What You Want. It's kind of a cool sounding little album track, but
yeah,
I don't know. It doesn't fit this band. Like,
should have been the hidden track.
Yeah, or like it just doesn't sound like them. Like when I listen to the songs at work and then I listen to that, I'm like, these don't have anything to do with each other.
Right.
Even though on its own, it's like I said, there's nothing. If you just played that for me, you're like, oh, this is kind of cool. I maybe wouldn't even know who it was.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't sound like a Letters to Cleo song. So, there's a handful of songs here that are just not up to the standard of the others.
Yep.
Or just outliers that, don't serve the record very well for me. What didn't work for you?
Well, I agree with you. Do What You Want. Yeah. Is just this weird, there's almost no lyrics to it. There's like, it should have been either the last song or 10 minutes after the last song, something like that. I think so. I Could Sleep feels weird because it's this like almost like Lisa Loeb-esque song or Jewel or something.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like, wow, they could have taken this whole album in that direction if they wanted to. If they really wanted to shoot for like a radio album and single.
Yep, for sure.
So I'm glad they didn't. But then it makes it in terms of like what works the best on this record, it makes it sound weird because then you have this like sort of mellow pop song at the end of the record that doesn't really make sense in terms of the overall record, when the stuff that works best for me is Demon Rock, Fast Way, Awake, Pizza Cutter, those kind of songs. Little Rosa. I wish there was a little bit more of like the Little Rosa thing where it's not, it's just super catchy. It doesn't have to be blazing. And because her voice works so well in that space. And I agree with you, when it slows down, it's not her best area in terms of vocal ability, like on Laudanum, if that's how you say it. So I think we have the same general issues with it.
I'm forgiving I Could Sleep because I think the song rating is on point. Like it matches just, as a song and melody, the rest of the record. I'm with you though that from a tone standpoint, it's a bit odd in that it's so soft. I mean, it could have been probably produced a little closer to Little Rosa, like just amp up some of those guitars a bit and, just give it a little extra jolt of energy. And it would have been more on that level and probably worked even better. But I'm sort of giving it a pass just because the songwriting is consistent with a lot of the others. It's just kind of tuned down.
It's alright that you don't wanna remember. In your hands, you got a martyr's head. In your minds, I know that's what you wish you were. Turn the blue sky black. You're such a hard luck, baby. Yeah, that's what's the matter with you. But I could sleep through this. I am as mystified.
There are a couple spots where like he's got an answer. I like that song, but it's a slow tempo, and I feel like there needed to be like more dynamics. And I don't mean like loud, soft dynamics. I think that's one of the things that I would like to have heard with this band more is like some dynamic stops, some start stop type stuff.
Yeah.
As opposed like the loud chorus, quiet verse, they kind of do that a lot, which was
They start with a lot of drum fills.
Mhm.
There's a formula. It's like, and then,
Yes.
you get the riff and then they drop the guitars out with bass in her vocal. Yeah, I'm with you. The dynamic there. I could take a song or two where it shook that up a bit more. There's also, I don't know if it's that song. Trying to check my notes here. There was a song where I think it's He's Got the Answer, maybe. She's just swallowed in the chorus. It's one of the few songs that's like that, but the guitars are so obnoxiously loud. And she's just like off in another room, it sounds like, which didn't seem like a wise decision for them.
Yeah. Her voice should always be very present.
Yeah.
And up in the mix. In the comments, bands like Hole and Veruca Salt came up. I don't really think there's much of a comparison. I think that's the wrong way to go, is comparing them to other female artists, because Hole is a whole other thing. Veruca Salt kind of gets in there, but Veruca Salt to me is like a little bit more just like riff driven, and it's all about those harmonies. Whereas, like I said, like this fits more with like Matthew Sweet and the Posies, I think, in a lot of ways.
This has nothing in common with Hole.
No, not at all.
I could see, I'm with you. I could see some of the Veruca Salt similarities, but different approach to songwriting.
It kind of makes me think of like, I've checked out the Muffs a little bit, and it's sort of like what I want the Muffs to be when I hear stuff, and I'm like, oh, these are interesting songs, but I don't feel like they like are as good as I want them to be.
Yeah.
And then I hear this and I'm like, this is what I wanted. This is kind of more what I want out of like a female fronted power pop rock band.
Yeah, and this is a big big production too. And this record sounds big. There's a lot of layers, big guitar tones.
Oh, the guitars are huge.
Stacey Jones is a great drummer. The drums sound great. It's some cool like ranges of bass tones too, some fuzzy stuff, some kind of Beatles tones on the bass. It's well produced.
Yep. And I think you could pick this up today and like still enjoy it. Like I don't know what Paramore is doing right now, but
they just put a new record out.
Did they? Yep.
This week, I think.
It's kind of what I want Paramore to sound like.
Well, they do the start and stop dynamics that this band should do.
Right.
You blend the two together.
Let's get into our worthy album.
Can I mention one more thing? That didn't work?
Yeah.
The album cover is awful.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say it's such a bad 90s cover. Like what are you doing with the hand grenade and like the ugly colors, and gives you no indication of what this band is.
The grenade could work, but like that background is just awful. And it's one of those things like it just doesn't help, if you're trying to cut through and you're flipping through the record bins and you see this and you don't know who the band is. It's not helping you out.
Right. And I get like, you don't want to put the band on the cover with like Kay up front and like create this whole tension thing. But like, there's a better cover for this record.
Yeah. Like I said, the grenade with the type would have been fine. Get rid of that graffiti background thing. And
I wonder if that's like a painting or something that they used.
It could very well be. But and when it's a thumbnail, you can't tell what it is. It just looks like throw up.
Yeah, they're just really bad colors too. It's like they don't work together. It's is it Peter Max who worked in those big ugly colors?
That's not Peter, but I get what you're saying. Oh. It's like graffiti with lo-fi graphics.
Yes. It's got some clip art. It's got a clip art grenade on top of some graffiti. Sorry if this was actually done by like some famous artist and we don't know it because we're not educated enough, but what can I tell you? What did Peter Max do? Didn't he work with like big colorful things?
Yeah, but it was like psychedelic.
Oh, okay.
This is like grungy graffiti style.
Gotcha. All right. Where do we land on this? Is it a worthy album, a better EP, or a decent single? What do you say?
I am right on the edge here. I'm going to go with a worthy album. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the 12 that I really like a lot and continue to grow on me the more I listen to the record. The other 4 are not terrible. They just muddy it for me. They kind of make the record feel a little bit unremarkable in its whole. If I'm just listening to it passively, the other 4 or 5 songs that I don't love, they're not skippers. They're just give you the impression if you're just passively listening, like, it's kind of average. But if you just focus on the songs that are really good, I think it is really solid. So I'm going to say worthy album. Where are you at?
I am right on that edge with you too, but I'm at like 7. That's really close. I think I'm at a better EP because I'm going with tracks 1, 2, 4, 7, 8, 9.
Yep.
11.
Yeah, I had the exact same, and I have I Could Sleep as my extra song. So that's how I got to 8. That's funny. We have the exact same songs. And there's space, the weaker songs are like just sprinkled in there too. So it's not like you can do like a first half, second half.
No, it's not. It's
it's like every third every third song is like,
Like I like the organ in Acid Jed with that like swing and beat thing.
Yeah.
Doesn't quite work for me with this band.
Yeah.
3/4 is hard to pull off when you have big guitars.
Yeah.
It
You
because
get
you get
stuck
locked
in a weird
into the
space and you can't get out of it.
yeah. I've heard
Yeah.
very few bands be able to write a really good 3/4.
It's seductive because when you start writing the riff and you get into the first part of it, you'll be like, oh, this kind of feels cool. Let's go here. And then you're 3 minutes into it and you're like, we've been doing this for 4
Yes.
minutes. Like,
Wasn't it Kevin Martin from Candlebox that said he always writes at least one song in 3/4? Like it's just in his DNA that every album has 1 3/4 song. For those who don't know, 3/4 means it has one less. It's 1 2 3 1 2 3 as opposed to 1 2 3 4 1 2 3. So it gives you that swing feel, which is very seductive because you're like, oh, you can swing back and forth.
Yeah, when you're in a rock band, you're like, oh, this kind of feels cool. Like we're not just driving, 4 on the floor here. We're getting some swing and into the sound, and then
right.
You're stuck.
And then
in
the
that,
drummer is stuck in that beat.
Right.
Do. He's only got one fill for the whole song.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess I'm at an EP. I'm at a very, very strong EP of 7 songs for Wholesale Meats and Fish. There's no meat or fish on the cover, which seems strange.
Right. That's a huge mess.
Like have a guy at a deli counter, have a picture of a guy at a deli counter holding like a ribeye and a fillet, and that's your Wholesale Meats and Fish right there.
I mean, while we're on the topic, that's a pretty terrible album title too.
It actually, yes.
I mean, compared to the Aurora Gory Alice is okay. A funny pun, I guess. Go is fine. Back in Nebraska. I don't know what that means. They're not from Nebraska. But Wholesale Meats and Fish. That sounds like if I was just knew nothing about this band and I was just looking at their catalog, I'd be like, oh, that's their experimental record. That's probably really weird and bad.
Well, if you look at the cover with the grenade and the painting, and then that you're like, is this like an Al Jorgensen side project?
Right.
I hope Kay doesn't hear this and get mad. Hopefully she did not pick the album cover. But we're keeping it real even when it comes down to graphic design. That's we cover it all. So it's a worthy album for Jay, a better EP for me. If you would like to vote on these records, just like our patrons did, help us pick our monthly winner of our album poll, you can do so by joining us at digmeoutpodcast.com or DMO Union. Digmeoutunion.com or DMOunion.com. Digmeoutpodcast.com is where you go to suggest the record that will end up in the poll. There's hundreds, and we're whittling them down month by month. I can't wait to see what's up next month. It's already been generating tons of discussion, both on Patreon and in our Discord. Our Discord is exclusive to our patrons. It's where all the talk happens. It's where we what has been happening on the Discord recently, Jay? The new trailer for did you see? I don't know if you saw. There's a trailer for a movie coming out called Air. It's Ben Affleck directing. It's about when Michael Jordan signed to Nike.
Okay.
And they made the Air Jordans. And Ben Affleck is dressed like Phil Knight because that's who he plays. And Phil Knight dresses like a crazy person. So Phil Knight was like wearing tracksuits like me.
Yeah.
But then he's also got these horrific like 80s aviator glasses. Just looks fabulous. It looks like the perfect movie for a dad to watch on TBS on a Saturday afternoon.
Oh boy.
Like Ford versus Ferrari.
Okay.
Or you know what I mean? Like it's one of those kind of movies where there's like 7 guys are credited, and then it's like, and Viola Davis. That's it.
Why not?
We had one woman come in for a day and shoot a scene, but the rest of it is like, it's like it's Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Chris Tucker, and like a bunch of other people, Chris Messina, and it's just like dude, and Viola Davis. Anyway, that's what happens over on the Discord. We talk about not just music, but pop culture in general. The passing of the great Burt Bacharach, that was talked about. His song catalog is absolutely insane. People don't really recognize, because he didn't sing everything, people don't really recognize like how much he wrote for people. It is crazy. Over like decade after decade after decade, just pumping out hits for people. He's got like a catalog that would be, I'm sure that Diane Warren is like jealous of how insanely big his catalog is. I mean, she's written a ton of songs and his has to be like 4 times as big. It's absolutely crazy. And he did one of my favorite albums with Elvis Costello, which is called North. And it's a collaboration album. The song Toledo is like one of my favorite Elvis Costello songs.
A lot of chatter on the new Depeche Mode.
Yeah, I think we might have a review coming up of that single in our box newsletter.
Yes, I know. I saw that. Ian got on it already.
Yep. The box newsletter comes out every week with a calendar of new releases of movies, music, TV shows, books relevant to 80s, 90s, and aughts music that we talk about on this show, plus 2 reviews of new releases, whether they're albums or EPs or singles or books, whatever. And sometimes our patrons contribute the reviews about music they're passionate about. So that's a lot of fun. And you can sign up for the box newsletter at digmeoutpodcast.com, where you suggest an album and where you can join the Union Strong. And lastly, Apple Podcasts is where you go to leave feedback, preferably positive, on this show. Preferably not a poop emoji. We're not a Jet album from 2002 on Pitchfork. Oh no, that was a gif of a monkey flinging its own poo into its mouth. That's what the entire review was for.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's okay now because I've over the past couple of years I've figured out the way they get around this is Pitchfork and Rolling Stone, they do revised reviews now. Where they're like, oh, that review that everybody disagrees with now, oh, we're going to just change it to get back in line with everybody's good graces.
Fuck those guys. Seriously.
They do reevaluations of their own reviews. Like,
I mean, I get it. Like, hot takes is how you get clicks and stuff, but I don't know, man. Just be honest. Also, just have some respect for people putting the time and energy into making art. Like,
yep. Well, if you
like it, like, take the time to explain why.
Well, in Chip's latest interview that he did for us most recently with Chad Clark of Smart Went Crazy and Beauty Pill, you can hear what happens when Pitchfork gave you a negative review in the early 2000s, as they did to Beauty Pill, and pretty much sank that band immediately. They did the same thing to Travis Morrison of the Dismemberment Plan. Remember, he put out a solo record and they gave it a 0, and it like his career ended that day. Like his tour was canceled. Wow. He like went into like computer where he like left his music and just started making like working on computers.
Good Lord.
Yeah. So
nice job. Cause we don't need more art in the world. We need more people like doing menial computer jobs.
Exactly. We need more computer programmers and people who can write code. I mean, we do.
Yes, but we also like would benefit from a little bit more creativity and
thoughtfulness, not just hot takes. Yeah. Everybody's got a hot take. Give me a warm. I don't want a hot take. I want a Franklin barbecue slow cooked.
What a brisket. Smoked brisket.
Give me a brisket take. We got to get that into the vernacular. You got your hot takes and you got your brisket takes.
I prefer my brisket takes moist, juicy.
Don't ever use the word moist again. Ever on the show.
Hey man, you're in Texas. That's what you need to say when you want the good brisket. You gotta know when you get up to the counter. You going moist or you going lean?
Oh. Yeah. Okay.
You can't be muddled. can't be muttering under your breath. You get booted.
Thank you for that.
You get
Explaining the etiquette of
Get
Texas
your barbecue etiquette down.
Okay. But Jay, I'm Tim. We're out and we'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.